This evening, we have an entrepreneur. We have Mr. Chad Lesher with us.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Raiders.
And I'm going to let Dr. Morrisette ask some questions about introducing himself and lead us into a discussion for the next 40 minutes or so. Relax, have some pizza. Think of a question you can ask at the end, and please don't throw anything at me, right?
Or me.
Or Chad. Dr. Morrisette, give it to you, sir.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming. It's quite a crowd. It's pretty good. All right, Chad, let's level up and get some context and background. You graduated from SHIP in 1994. Tell us about SHIP in the 1990s.
So, part of my background in history is I was born in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, at the Chambersburg Hospital, so I grew up in Shippensburg. I went to Shippensburg High School. Go Greyhounds. There's probably no Greyhound. All right, I guess a Greyhound. All right, yep. So I grew up, I knew the town pretty well. Decided to go to Shippensburg University, and yeah, the campus has changed quite a bit. I think it shows my age. It's been quite a while since I've been here and gone to school here, but it's changed dramatically for the good, but still kept that same smaller school feel. I think is such an appeal to many students, and probably a lot of the reason why many of you are here. You know, the smaller class size, you get better relationships with your professors and your fellow students. So small school then, still a small school now, but it's grown in its own way too in that time period.
Yeah, let's get specific. Richard Avenue in 1994. What was that all about?
I don't know that that's changed too much, Richard Avenue. I think that's kind of stayed the same. That is certainly where you can go and hang out and have some good times. So yeah, the scene there, you knew where to go in Shippensburg. Being a small town, you knew where to go, where the parties were at. It wasn't hard to figure out. There was only a few select areas. I don't know, has that changed much today? Still centered around the same areas to know where the, yeah, they
Nothing changed. Well, they did change one thing. You used to be able to go out on the front lawns and everybody party. Now you have to go to the back. You can't party on the front lawns.
Bummer.
That is bad.
It's a bummer.
I know.
Yeah, that is a bummer.
That is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's not good. Sometimes change isn't good.
That's a bad change. I used to have to drive through there and everything. It was always nice to see everybody out there on the lawns.
So active.
It was great. Unless they threw something at you or something like they saw my faculty sticker. Okay, so you graduate in 1994, and I know that the 1990s were a magical time. The internet had just been commercialized, follow the wall, globalization. What was it like entering the, I guess you'd say, the workforce in the 1990s?
Yeah, so I was a business management major. I guess I don't think they do it the same way now. It was a BSBA at the time, was what my degree was. I think that's changed a little bit, but I knew I always wanted to be in business management. I knew I wanted to be in the business, and I thought in the corporate world. So I kind of geared my my courses and my activities and my internships while on campus. And while that's the biggest advice I can maybe give you while you're here is maximize your moments on this campus. Look for opportunities to network and meet a lot of people. I was on the boxing club, which I understand maybe coming back around and being rejuvenated a little bit, which makes me very happy. So I did that and just look for those opportunities to network and meet people. Because when I graduated, it really helped to have a lot of great references, a lot of great information, and attending a lot of those job fairs. So when I graduated in '94, it wasn't, the economy didn't feel great at the time. I was pretty young, so I'm not sure how much of an economic viewpoint I had, realistically one anyway. So I ended up going into retail. And I think that's what happens with a lot of business management, because there's tons of those opportunities, because it's really it's quick to burn out in the retail world. So I ended up going to work for CVS Pharmacy to go into their management training program, and I thought, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to manage people, and it's not for everybody. If you get into retail, make sure you know what you're getting into. But I got into that, and it really was some great, very fast, real-world learning for me. And sometimes you have to learn it the hard way.
That's good advice. Retail has lots of turnover. It's a grind. Okay, so eventually you end up at Carlisle Syntec. And well, talk about your career. I mean, you had lots of jobs. You spent lots of time there. And tell us about some of the jobs you had and what you did.
Yeah, so I knew I didn't want to do retail. I had just had my son, who's now 27 years old. He was 6 months old at the time, and I knew retail wasn't for me, and I said, I need to figure out a longer-term strategy here and what I wanted to do. And this is how old I am. A family friend reached out and said there was an opening at Carlisle, and it was for technical services specialist. I didn't even know what that meant, but what I thought I wanted was I wanted a job where I was going to go put on a suit every day. I wanted to be in corporate America. I wanted to put a suit on, carry a briefcase, all the things that you might see at Mad Men, right? And I quickly get to Carlisle, get that opportunity. And while it was a sizable corporation, not the size it is today, it's about almost $6 billion company now. But I realized that I was also just going to go get on a lot of roofs and get my hands dirty and figure out what was wrong with a lot of the roofs that they had and get on my hands and knees, chase leaks. But while it was hard, it's the best way to learn your business is to get your hands dirty and learn it from the ground up. You know, that's why if you want to own a McDonald's franchise, you have to be a manager at McDonald's for a while because that's the only way you're going to appreciate and understand the business day to day.
And so you started out just doing mostly service, tech stuff like that. Eventually you had to get into sales. And what was that like? Is it tough? I mean, it's nice to know the nuts and bolts of everything, but what's it like going out and selling a product?
Yeah, so I knew the technical side probably wasn't for me long term. So yeah, I get into sales to be a regional sales manager a few years after I started at Carlisle. And yeah, that was more, you didn't really sell day to day necessarily as a regional manager, but you are there to ensure that your reps and your distributors are doing right by Carlisle, promoting and selling your products in the right way, and managing the sales channels in your different markets. And it's a completely different world. It's a world that you could be lazy in. You can hide being a regional manager. If your market performs well and you've got great reps, you can coast by. But if you really want to learn as much as you can from each of the entities that you work with, and you get real close to them, develop some deep relationships, and I think that really helped me take off for my next progression in my career.
And that's a big step. In 2011, you go out on your own and you become a manufacturer's rep for Carlisle Syntec. Now, why don't you tell everybody what a manufacturer's rep is? I've worked with several of them, and I've got a good friend who's one, but explain it because a lot of people might not understand exactly what it means.
Yeah, so just inherently, manufacturers are really good at one thing, and that's manufacturing. So a lot of them outsource their sales efforts to rep groups or rep agencies like myself to handle the sales efforts for them. And their mindset is they can get a team or a group with a lot of experience, and the only way that those people are going to get a lot of money from the manufacturer is if they sell a lot of products. So it's feast or famine. You sell a lot, you can make a lot, but when you have bad months, like we had when COVID first started during the material crisis, you have to be ready for those rainy days too. So it's a real benefit for the manufacturers to get experienced, higher level sales force and not have that overhead, and the only way it costs them a lot of money is if they sell a lot of product.
So basically, and I don't mean to make this sound simplistic, but they're outsourcing all their sales and marketing.
It's really as simple as it is. Yeah, it really is. It's that's not what they want to focus their energies on. They want to focus their energies on making a great product.
Right.
And then they want other people to go sell it for them. And in 2009, I had lived in Texas before as a regional manager for Carlisle, and in 2009, I went back down there as an employee. The rep and the distributor in Texas specifically was going out of business for a myriad of reasons. And I went down there to build that network back up, hire some reps, but I did that as an employee. But the understanding would always be when I'm ready and when I'm ready to submit a business plan, Carlisle would look at that and let me go independent. But they made it very clear that they weren't just going to hand me the rep side of things independent, because again, that's going to cost them more money if we continue on the path of good sales, right? So you have to have a great business plan, and you have to sell these manufacturers on why you. So after a couple years of going down there and just working as a sales manager, getting a salary and great benefits, I made a decision that you look at risk versus reward.
Yeah,
and,
I love that. You get trapped. I was making, when I was working with Gallup, I was making big bucks. And I was like, wow, I don't think I can leave this. And then one day you say to yourself, I've got to take the jump. If I don't do it now, if I don't start my business now, I never will.
It's terrifying. I went down in 2009, the economy was horrible. When I got to Dallas, buildings were half built and stopped because they ran out of money and banks stopped funding construction. And when I went independent in 2011, things had certainly started to improve, but they still weren't great. It took us a while to dig out of the 2008 economic crisis. So it was terrifying. I had never been without a job. I had never been without a paycheck. And when you go independent, it's going to take you 60 days to get your first commissions from the manufacturer. So you've got to be ready to not get any money for a while you pay the people that are employing you. So you got to be real confident in your abilities and your plan of what you're going to do before you make that jump.
Yeah, I remember I sold everything I had. Sold a house, sold a car, moved 1,500 miles to a new city. And I was like, I think I'm crazy.
I mean, a lot of people thought I was, because again, Carlisle is an outstanding company. A great company to work with, work for and work with. But I just thought the corporate thing had run its course for me. I was tired of the monthly reports and all the things that come with that corporate job, and I was ready to invest in myself and take a run at it.
And you're happy that you did?
So far.
Thing is, we never bring people up here who have not been successful in that. So
it wouldn't be weird.
It would be weird. You're going to bring somebody up here that, hey, I took a chance and it didn't work out.
But on that, even as you make that jump, and if you have success, there are certainly failures that happen, right? And every great success story that I've ever read has periods of angst and tough times. And that's what makes the success that much sweeter.
Sure.
I'll jump in. Can you talk about one of the failures, story there?
Yeah, we've certainly brought on product lines that early on as a business owner, I quickly learned you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you just have to learn it by being an owner and just going through the process. You can read so many books and do everything, but sometimes life experience is going to be the best lesson for you. And earlier on, I would take on product lines that I thought could be a nice money grab, pay some bills, but that just didn't work because they didn't fit in the core of the customers we were selling to and what our strengths were with our team. And it just didn't work. It became a distraction. So really determining your core competencies and what makes sense for your business, I had to learn some of those things the hard way.
Well, I know you have, besides Carlisle Syntec, I know you've got some other companies that you rep. And on your website, you call it the envelope of the building. So what are some other products that you have?
Yeah, so that's where we started to determine, what makes sense for my organization, and it became, we only do commercial construction. We don't deal on the residential side of things. So it's all commercial construction, and anything to build a building from below grade waterproofing to blind side, up the walls, to the roof, to insulation and skylights, any of those things that just tie into that. It's great to offer all of those products, because then you can go to an architect or a building owner and you can be that resource for them on just about any question they may have on that construction. And that is a huge asset to offer to a market, where an architect knows, well, I can just call CSL because they offer something and they can at least educate me and answer some questions and help me with my specification.
Yeah, I think anytime you can give technical assistance, even to somebody who really knows a lot, but they may not be able to, with all the new materials and everything like that, solutions, whether it be an architect or building contractor or whatever, that's got to be a huge advantage going in and selling.
It's a very technical sale. And it's also something I learned at an early age working for Carlisle. You can't fake it till you make it. Especially with roofing contractors. They like to trip you up. They like to feel like they are the experts in a lot of their fields, and a lot of the ways they are. So if you're trying to fake it with them, they're going to flush that out pretty quick and find no use for you. So you must be the best expert you can be on any of these products you can sell, and that includes knowing your competition. I expect my team to know our competition as much as they know Carlisle, because how can you properly sell against somebody if you don't know?
Yeah, I agree. The thing is competition's always doing strange things to you. I mean, I used to get competitors come in, they would put in low wall bids and things like that. And you'd have to go back and say, I can't match that. And I guess I tell you what, the next time this person bids on this, if you take this job, you're not going to get that bid again.
Yeah, so price is a very big deal in our industry. It's something we talk about quite a bit. Carlisle will never be the low price leader. That's not their model. It's one of the biggest things I respect about Carlisle. They expect a premium for their products. It's a premium I think they've earned with their innovation and the quality of their products and the team. Some of that team's here today, by the way, Carlisle team, is outstanding. So I think that Carlisle's worth a premium, but part of our job as the sales force is to manage that premium, because that premium can't get out of hand. People are willing to pay a little bit more for something that brings more value, but you have to understand exactly what that value is, because that helps determine your pricing philosophy.
Well, it's how much value is going to migrate towards them. I mean, there's so much value that's out there. Some of it's going to migrate towards you as a seller, and some of it's going to migrate to the customer as a purchaser. But what you've got to do is you've got to show that the migration of value in this sale is going to migrate, a large part of it is going to migrate to that customer.
Well, and sometimes that can be as simple as a features and a benefits conversation. A lot of salespeople will talk to you, they'll talk your ear off about all the features that they offer, but they never get to the benefits. Carlisle can offer some really cool products. Like they have a protective film they put on top of the membrane when they ship it out, so that if it gets just discolored and gets stained and so badly, because a lot of the roofs that we sell are white, and they put a protective film on so that when you're done with the roof, you take that film off and you're delivering a beautiful white new roof to the owner. But a lot of times we just talk about the feature, which is a protective film on it. What's the benefit? That's what really is important to these people if they're going to pay more for something. What's it mean to them? And if you're going to sell a premium in value, then that gets even deeper. Then that gets into the relationship. What's your relationship with these people you're trying to sell to?
Well, the whole thing we were talking earlier about hailstorms. When you talk about putting out a product like that, and in Texas, you're going to have a roof is going to get destroyed because hail is going to come through sooner or later. And I'm sure you guys have a really good policy and everything about what you do in such a situation like that.
Yeah, so that ties into one, the life expectancy for a roof in Dallas. A commercial roof is about 7 years because it's likely to get held out. So Carlisle's got a great product. It's called Fleece Pack. And what's great about Fleece Pack, it's your single ply membrane. It's got like a felt underneath it, but it's very resistant to hail. So you've got to capitalize on those opportunities. One is a more expensive product, which means more to the manufacturer, and it means more to us. And it's our job to promote those kind of products and upsell and take advantage of market conditions, which is a hailstorm's coming. It's coming.
If you live in the Midwest, you're going to have a car that's full of dings.
Yes.
Yes.
Unless you've got a really big garage to fit all your cars, yeah, it's probably going to get beat up. And your house is going to get reshingled, yeah. Houses are probably about 5 years.
5 years? Right, 20.
Right.
20 year.
Yeah, so we get a lot of wind events too. I mean, besides tornadoes, which are continuing to grow.
You're not, it's good that you don't work for the Chamber of Commerce. It's a lovely device.
Yes, yes.
All right, let's go to some recent history, because you're in a business where manufacturing and supply chains are a big deal. And so I want to know, how did the pandemic impact you in 2020 and 2021?
So, when the pandemic first hits, by the way, when I was in New York City to see my son, we lived there about 5 days before the country shut down. And my wife did not want to go to New York because she read the news. And she saw what was coming, and New York was obviously one of the hotbeds that started. So we were in New York, and we knew it was coming. We felt very close to it there. You come back, and the world shuts down. And you immediately have to deal with your own personal fears and insecurities and how scared you are for yourself and your family, but you have to immediately start thinking about your team and all that they're facing. I have people on my team that have diabetes, and we were quickly learning that those people were especially susceptible to COVID and what it could do. So really my first instinct and my first thing that I wanted to accomplish is to make sure that my team knew that the most important thing right now was their safety. In Texas, a lot of COVID was treated for all that time like it didn't exist, but I didn't really let that impact how our company approached it, which was, if my employees didn't feel safe doing something, then they didn't do it. I wasn't going to ask them to do something I wasn't willing to do, and if they didn't feel safe going somewhere or seeing somebody, then they didn't. And that created quite an opportunity for us to have to adapt and pivot and change how we went to business.
Well, I mean, you could still, now you're not installing the roofs or anything like that, but you're doing a lot of sales and technical meetings and things like that with people. So did you start doing more stuff online, on Zoom, or how did you do that?
You go to virtual, like many of us did, but I don't know, I quickly started to sense that was wearing people thin very fast. So we did the virtual meetings for a while. I really just spent a lot of time too, just internally keeping my team motivated, doing little things together virtually. We had a talent show with my team virtually, so we could keep connected and feel that connection with each other, which we just couldn't do in person. And when you're a small business centered around a lot of salespeople, that connection is huge. So I wanted to make sure that we tried to do what we could to be connected, but we did virtual things. And then when we could, we would go outside. That's a great part of construction, is we could go outside with a lot of what we did.
That's what I was thinking. Construction allows you to at least go outside and, and keep 6 feet away.
Exactly.
No, we're just going to gloss over the talent show thing.
I was going to let him off the hook.
What did you do for the talent show?
So I may or may not have bought a puppet. Thank you. When the pandemic hit, the pandemic hit all of us in different ways, and I wanted to have my own amusement. So yeah, Yeah, I had a puppet, and he helped entertain my team a little bit. His name's Santiago. He's a pretty cool dude. And some people did dances with their family. You know, it was just a myriad of different things, and it really was great. It was really great.
I think Dr. Morrisette would have sang a Taylor Swift song.
Yes.
He's a Swiftie.
I'm a Swiftie. There's no doubt about that. So we had a contest in our class. It wasn't during the pandemic, but we had to guess Taylor Swift's net worth. So that was a question that I had once with the class. I said, we all have to guess how much.
Do you know the answers?
I know now. I did not know at the time.
Could I guess?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
800 million?
400 million.
Oh, wow, I way overstated that.
Next year she'll be worth 800 million.
Check tomorrow.
Tomorrow she'll be worth 800. I think she's maybe 31.
Yeah, so my wife and my daughter just went to her concert in Dallas. She sold out Cowboy Stadium 3 nights in a row, 80,000 people, and she had every seat packed for 3 nights straight. And she performed for 3 hours and 15 minutes every night.
Wow.
Does your puppet sing Taylor Swift?
No, a puppet has no singing ability.
Yes.
It's remarkably well.
All right, let's talk about how the pandemic turned into the supply chain disaster. Because you've got to sell and you've got to deliver the product, get paid. So what happened?
So I can very vividly remember getting vaccinated in the first quarter of 2021 and thinking, okay, now we can get back to normal. Here we go. I got a vaccine, I feel safer, let's get back to it. And I would say I experienced that for a few weeks, and then the material crisis hit. And real quickly on how that happened, a lot of that happened because of Texas. So in February of 2021, we had an ice event where it was the first time in the history of Texas, every county in Texas went through a severe freeze warning, everything for about 5 days. We were below freezing. That's not normal for Texas. And a lot of the petrochemical raw material plants are based in South Texas and Southwest Louisiana. Well, those plants lost power because our power grid could not handle the weather that came through, because Texas, their power grid is self-sustained.
Yeah, there's 3 power grids in the United States. One's in the east, one's in the west, and one's in Texas. So Texas has got its own power grid, which is strange. Well, not strange, but it's true.
Texas is real arrogant. I don't think that's a secret. And it failed. It failed miserably. So those plants were frozen, and a lot of equipment was ruined and destroyed. You know, cost billions of dollars in damage, and it is not something that you go and get those plants up and running with the snap of a fingers and flip the switch back on. It took, I think, upwards of 5 to 6 months before they could even get to operating again. And so all that raw material was lost. Then you combine it with, we are very reliant on China for our steel supply. And the reason for that is the steel that we get from China is cheaper than we can make it here. And China then, of course, they're going to take care of themselves in that situation, which is understandable. So all that combined, we got to a point, and I'm telling you, it felt like one day my phone just started ringing, and orders that we had in the system just could not be filled. And our lead time, we could usually get somebody started on a 1 million square foot project. We could usually ship them their material in 2 to 3 weeks from the time they order it. It went from 2 to 3 weeks to 9 months. And not only that, if it's new construction, steel decking, you couldn't get your hands on that. All of it just created a huge log jam. And then, of course, roofing just became the new toilet paper. Panic buying. People see that happen. Now we just got flooded with orders that we couldn't possibly fulfill.
I mean, it's nice to have orders.
It's great.
It's great. But the problem is you don't get paid until the product arrives and it's installed and you wait 60 days.
You know, it was great to be able to sell everything that you could get your hands on. You know, supply had completely taken over demand. And so you demand took over supply. So you were selling everything that you had, which was great, but you were also leaving a lot of your customers unhappy because you couldn't take care of everyone. So you had to make very strategic decisions on who you were going to take care of and who you just couldn't. Because you had a I'd say that supply went from, if a typical month was 100%, we were probably down to 40% of what we would typically be able to supply.
I know you had to come up with some type of rationing formula. What, if it's not a company secret, what kind of rationing formula did you come up with?
So to Carl's credit, because not every other manufacturer, you know, we compete with companies like Jones Manville, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company, GAF, who likes to sell themselves as the largest roofing manufacturer in the world. We compete with some very big boys. And I think Carlisle just realized very quickly that we had to go on allocation. And allocation's rough, and it was tough to determine, not just say, okay, we're on allocation, you get this month. You still have to set up. Carlisle had to quickly change, you know, they're on SAP. They had to completely change how their system was set up and how they took orders. It was, for the size of who Carlisle is, they did a tremendous job of adapting and pivoting to allocation. And the bigger rep groups like myself were very closely involved with what that looked like and how we took that to market, how we communicated that. We spent a lot of time just educating people on what was going on, why, and where it was headed. People would always come to me in June of 2021, when will this end? And truly my answer was, I have no idea. And that's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. Are things back to normal now?
They are. Supply's good. But it took close to 2 years to get back to normal. And it was part of the thing coming out of allocation. What happens is people are getting their hands on every bit of material they can get their hands on. Everything. Just ship it. I'll figure it out because I don't want to run out. And what happens is then as we get out of allocation, there's a lot of material out there right now in this country on construction sites that might still be 3 to 4 months before that site's ready for a roof. So we have to get through what we're calling an allocation hangover. There's a lot of material out in the field that hasn't been installed. We've got to work through that, so that hurts sales as we go into this year. But now it really is starting to get back to normal, and we're back to the normal challenges that we typically face.
Okay, so we're at the end. We've got 2 more sections. First is our, I guess you'd say, underwhelming, underrated, overrated. So I'm going to have you rate a few things,
Okay.
overrated or underrated. Then we'll get to some student questions.
Great.
Okay, so let's start with, okay, you can have these people underrated or overrated. You can tell us why. The Dallas Cowboys, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
Ooh.
America's team.
America's team.
How could you possibly overrate America's team? No, look, it's a tough time asking me now. I'm real disappointed. My biggest rival made it to the Super Bowl. Makes me sick to my stomach. So there's plenty of overrated to it, but I love them too much. I love them too much to call them overrated. I just can't do it.
Okay, it's fine with me. All right, let's do this. Now, I know that you said you were in the boxing club. So, mixed martial arts, underrated or overrated?
I would probably say that's probably pretty underrated. That's to be able to go into a fight, that was enough for me to figure out how to use my hands and deal with the hands of my opponent. To then have to worry about feet and wrestling, that seems like a lot to me. So those guys are tremendous, and that seems so much more violent than what I experienced when I boxed.
I would say that's pretty underrated.
I knew coming out, I was an okay boxer when I graduated from Ship, but I felt like I was really good in the world of educated boxers because I would fight the Naval Academy, Penn State, Lock Haven. Golden Gloves now, you're going into a whole different world of boxers that are trying to learn the craft because that's going to be their living. And they're getting on there, they're coming out of some real bad, neighborhoods and areas. I was like, I don't think I can compete in that world.
Well, all I'm just saying is, I've only seen one mixed martial arts, competition. It was scary how violent it is. It was just scary. Scary. Anyway, the next is just-in-time supply chain systems. Underrated or overrated?
Wow. So that's a great question because you certainly want to say now that we've gone through what we've gone through, it's way overrated. But I think we really have to examine how often things like this happen. That was what was really hard for many of us in this industry, is we went from back-to-back years of unprecedented events and times, 100-year events, let's call them. From the pandemic to a material supply crisis, I had never experienced anything like either one of those things. But we lived and we went for many, many years, but Carlisle's probably pushing 60 years now. It was fine for 58 of those 60 years, but just in time, it was rough when the crisis hit, for sure.
Do you have another one?
I've got one more and then do yours, okay? I've got, what's the business environment, let's just say the business environment in Dallas for our students who may be trying to think about a place to relocate. What's the business environment? Underrated or overrated?
Okay, well can I ask the group a question real quick? So just throw out some numbers. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the business or economical environment in Dallas, Texas? And here's some numbers. 1 out of 10. From what you think it is. 6, 7, then it's underrated. I'd say from an economic business standpoint, it's probably a 9 out of 10.
I have a really good friend who lives in Dallas, and he told me that there's so much building going on in Dallas that you can't believe it.
There's cranes everywhere.
Cranes everywhere.
Which is an interesting fun fact, though. The majority of our business is not new construction, it's re-roofing, because
every 7 years.
And God only made so much land. So you live by new construction, you can die by it. So re-roofing is 80% of our business. And it's a great business to have because you're always going to need a new roof. At some point, you can keep fixing it, but at some point you're going to need a new one.
Right, so I'm going to turn it over to Don, and you can ask him a question, and then we can take some questions from students. I'm done.
You're talking about Dallas being a 9 out of 10. I have two of my highest valued people that moved to Dallas just pre-pandemic because considered a business mecca. They have one-day flights anywhere in the country. A guy in Pasadena from Dallas this week. Another person comes back east to North Carolina, but they're based out of Dallas. And we say Dallas, we think the city. Dallas is like a state itself within Texas. It's huge. It takes, an hour or 2 to drive across the whole of Dallas?
So, great question. From Texarkana, which is the easternmost point in Texas, to El Paso, which is the westernmost point in Texas, is a further drive than El Paso to Los Angeles. A lot of people don't realize Texas is really big. So it's huge geographically, and then from an economic standpoint, just standing alone, it's massive. And Dallas is probably, Austin's a close second, but Dallas is probably the hottest economic center for them.
So being from Texas, something my son started watching recently, PBR bull riding. Is that underrated or overrated in Texas?
That doesn't do a lot for me. Being a Yankee, being from up here, but they take it very seriously down there. I tell you, there's a lot of big belt buckles in Texas. It is definitely a real thing. And they take it very seriously, and there's some extremely talented people that do that.
All right, thank you. I'm coming down here. I want to see if somebody has a question we can ask.
On everybody at once.
I usually have to warm them up to it.
Don't be shy.
Can even be Cowboys related. If you want to talk the draft, more than welcome.
Sometimes they're afraid to make eye contact. See, I thought you would. That's why I looked at you guys first.
So how long did it take you to assimilate into Texan culture? Like, when did you get your first 5-gallon hat, your first cowboy boots, and what's your largest belt buckle?
So this is my largest belt buckle. So I do get that question a lot. I own one pair of cowboy boots. I believe you have to do that because you have to assimilate yourself to it a little bit. But I also am a big believer that I don't want to try and be somebody that I'm not. Again, I think that'll get flushed out real quick. So I try to blend in too much, but you got to stay true to who you are. And I'm a Yankee, and I'm just I can have a cowboy hat, but I just think I look real silly.
And then an actual question is, you were talking about how you had to really focus on how you wanted to strategize between customers and companies. And so, like, what did you do, or how much did you do to try and repair those relationships once things started coming back to normal?
Oh, great question. It worked both ways. The people that you took care of so well, you had an expectation for them to now turn around and be more loyal to you as things got back to normal. So you had to be constantly reminding them without, throwing it in their face of all the things that you did to protect their business, and continue to sell your value in that partnership that you have with a lot of your key customers. But on the flip side, there were people that you did not take care of very well. And when it's that side of the coin, they have very long memories. And that takes time. But I feel like we leaned very hard on, we were just very transparent with people and honest. We don't have that material for you. A lot of that is based on the fact that you haven't bought a lot from us historically. So therefore, allocation is based on that. Let's work on that moving forward so that if this situation ever arises, you're a better customer base for Carlisle, and I'll be better to take care of you whenever situations like that arise again.
What advice would you give your 22-year-old self?
Don't be a Cowboys fan? No. I would say that just read more. There is so much information out there. I would also not just go with the basics of business, but deal more and be more educated and dive into the philosophical side of things. If I could give one piece of advice to my 22-year-old self, would certainly be, when you're 22, you're not very vulnerable. It's hard to be vulnerable. I lean and I teach a lot to my team about Brené Brown. If you don't know about who she is, she's from Houston, Texas. She's done one of, if not the most popular TED Talk in history. She's extraordinary, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. And what that means is be vulnerable enough to be open with your peers, your boss, and people you work with, because that's how you grow. Be vulnerable enough to talk about what didn't go well in that meeting or where you think you need improvement, because that's true courage. Vulnerability is true courage, and that's probably the biggest thing I would tell my very young self.
What was the name of the TED Talk again?
Brené Brown. B-R-E-N-E. Lots of books that she has published too, but she has a Netflix special, which makes it easier to get into, right, than reading a book, and I highly recommend it.
I'm a big fan of books. You should know that.
So being a son of an entrepreneur, I've seen firsthand how the stresses can weigh on a person. What do you do at the end of the day or the end of the week to take some of those off your back?
Balance in your life is huge. Workaholics, it just doesn't end well. You will tell people that the people that work hardest are the ones that are the most successful. And it's the old adage that I believe in. I just want my team to work smarter. I want them to have a good personal life, a family life. So I try to, when I come home, during the material crisis and the pandemic, it was hard to not bring those stresses home because it was intense. But I really try to leave those things at work and try to have a real separation between your personal life and the work. But I've also found during this, the Peloton was a pretty big help to me. So take your frustrations out on a Peloton bike, or I also highly recommend a heavy bag. Go punch something. It's not a person. Do that.
That's great, so that you practice some self-care.
Yeah, you must. Must.
We just had a wellness fair this week.
It's huge stress will eat you up.
I know you mentioned that you were in like management and now you're in sales more. For college, like as you graduate college, would you recommend exploring other fields in business or kind of sticking to your own as you graduate?
Yeah, I think the more you can round out your experience, it's great. Now there can be limitations to that because, take accounting for instance. That's not for everybody. And I would recommend if you want to get into sales that you spend 10 years in the accounting field, but I think you should certainly have enough connections or involvement with any aspect of the business, because if you do plan to be a business owner someday, you're going to need all those skills at some level to do that. And anything that you can do in a managerial sense is going to help you grow. But sales, you really need to determine if that's for you. It's not for everybody. Hearing no is not fun. Rejection is tough. You got to get some thick skin, and it's not the glamorous job that I think it's been portrayed to be in a lot of ways. There's an art and a science to sales. There's a science to it because there's some real fundamentals to what you do, but there's a real art and a nuance to it. Have a personality. People want to buy from people they like to be around. It really can be that simple in some ways. If they like you and you know what you're talking about, there's no reason you can't kill it in sales. So be as well-rounded as you can, but I think as you get towards your 30s, try to find where you want to go with it, because you certainly don't want to be bouncing around too much as you head towards 30.
That's great.
No, we're done, I think, with questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher, for being here tonight. I did a little research on you and read your bio before coming to hear you speak tonight. And could you talk a little bit about the philanthropic work that you do and how that adds value to your business and why that is important for successful businesses kind of to have that corporate responsibility element?
Thank you, that's my sister, by the way. That wasn't even, that felt very staged, but it was not, actually. I didn't know she was going to ask me that. Before I answer that, I want to talk about that your team, when you're a small business, your team, you don't all need to be best friends, but you do need to care about each other. And they need to feel like if you're the leader of that organization, that they believe in you and they believe that you're a good person. People want to work for a good person. You can be super successful maybe and not be a good person. Nobody wants to work for that. That's going to run its course. So I try to build a team that we all work together to help each other succeed. With that, philanthropy can be a big part of that, and you've got to give back, because if you feel good doing it, and you should do it. And we do a lot of work with Travis Frederick's charity in Dallas, Blocking Hunger, which helps food pantries for children in schools, because children will get assistance with their lunches and sometimes their breakfast at schools, but that's where it ends. So what do they do about dinner and weekends and summers? And they build food pantries throughout the Dallas Metroplex. And I'm on the board for that organization, because anything with kids will get me. Kids that are hungry just makes me want to cry. That's just awful. So I love that organization. And then my office up in Colorado, my business partner up there, works very closely with CASA, which works for kids. You get a court-appointed designated person to help them go through being in adoption process or needing to find parents or foster parents. It gives them somebody that will be there for that child and advocate for them and support them so that they're not just going through that process alone. So again, kids are my soft spot.
Thank you. In fact, part while you're here, I
Yeah.
want to give back. The lot of students we have a lot of hungry students at Shippensburg University. They're hungry to win. Most of these kids are about ready to graduate and go into the world and make $1 million by next year, right?
And if you do have that, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to get into sales, you must be ultra competitive. It should hurt. It should make you almost furious when you lose a job or you lose something to somebody else. You have to have that drive because that's what pushes you through so hard. And so if that's not you, then there's plenty of other things you can do in the business world. But if you want to be in sales, you really should be ultra competitive.
Well, that's a great comment. Do you have any other closing comments?
A Jordan type mentality. Like I have, you never want a negative sell, but I always have just almost a little bit of hatred for my competition. I'm just like, you want to take them down. And that's what drives it. And your team feeds off that. And that's why you just don't let even the smallest sale go by without a fight. Fight for every bit you can. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give there.
Fight for every bit you can. That's good, that's good. That's your book title.
Oh, right, perfect. Is anybody writing that down back there?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Dr. Morrisette, any closing comments? Thank you, Mr. Lesher. I appreciate it very much.
It's humbling and I'm honored to be here. It's great. I was sitting there so long ago. So I appreciate, I will be, after we're done with this, anybody has any questions for me or any information they want, I'll be glad to talk to anybody. And yes, thank you for having me very much.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.